After days of protests across some of China's biggest cities, authorities are beginning to regain control of the streets. New barriers have been erected in Shanghai, while police were out in force in Beijing overnight.
The Chinese authorities are very experienced at managing protests. They're ready for this kind of eventuality, and I think you see them sort of starting to move into top gear now.
The numbers of protesters aren't enormous by Chinese standards, but they are remarkable for their geographical spread.
There are large crowds in some cities, hundreds, if not maybe 1,000 or more.
They are all talking about the same thing: COVID zero, anti-Communist Party, in some cases anti-Xi Jinping. Now, you don't see that, and you haven't seen that, I would say, for decades.
The immediate cause of these mass protests was a fatal fire in an apartment block in China's far west last week. The city of Urumqi had been in lockdown for months, and many locals blamed COVID restrictions for delaying firefighters and the deaths of at least 10 people.
City dwellers in a lot of other urban areas were looking at that and going, oh my God, that could be us.
And what started as vigils to honour the dead in at least 8 cities across China turned into protests against the lockdown. In Shanghai, some demonstrators even went a step further, denouncing the government and President Xi Jinping, who's made zero COVID his signature policy.
That's a very unusual thing to happen, especially in a city like Shanghai, which is not known to be as politically conscious as other cities like Beijing.
Dissenting Beijing academic Wu Chang says Shanghai has been at the eye of this political storm.
They have turned the pain that they have endured over the past 3 years directly on questions of the current regime. This is something that the Chinese regime hasn't experienced since 1949.
Despite strict government controls of the media, many Chinese are becoming aware that other countries are moving on from COVID lockdowns, in part through state media coverage of President Xi's recent global diplomatic blitz.
Interestingly, a lot of the time, he wasn't actually wearing a mask, and nobody else was either. And it's sort of, it's only jarring if you've been living with a mask for 3 years. So a lot of Chinese were going, well, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Could go all the way here. He has!
And then, just by coincidence, you also have the World Cup happening. And they're going, well, how can the World Cup be happening there when we're still locked down in our houses?
Zero COVID remains China's official policy.
China has been following the dynamic zero COVID policy and making adjustments based on the realities on the ground. We believe that with the leadership of the Communist Party of China and the cooperation and support of all Chinese people, our fight against COVID-19 will be successful.
It's not based on science now. The heavy-handedness of the lockdowns, the obsession with testing every day, it doesn't have the benefits that the government is telling people it has.
In global terms, China has been successful in suppressing the spread of the virus, mainly through draconian lockdowns. But with relatively low vaccination rates, and compared to the West, a less effective vaccine, the country struggles to find a new post-COVID normal.
There's, I think, at least 32 million people over 80 in China. Only about 40% of them are fully vaccinated according to WHO standards. So there's a lot of vulnerable people, and the government is very mindful of that.
Protests in solidarity have been held across Australia and Hong Kong. China's hard line against COVID is coming under increasing domestic and international scrutiny.
Authorities in China will be able to lock down these protests much more quickly and much more easily than they're able to lock down the COVID virus. So we'll probably see the protests disappear in coming weeks, but the COVID zero problem will still be there.